Welcome. Today's a really special day for a lot of people, and I think it's going to be very meaningful. I got to meet Amber probably just about a year and a half ago, I think it was. And can I tell your story?
Sure.
Okay, so Heidi was doing some work with the CLEAR program remotely. So she was online and on a Zoom call, like we've all been doing for the last couple of years. And this one student said, "Could you stop talking and stop moving?" And Heidi said, "Okay, I'll do that." But I think Heidi was a little concerned and confused for a little bit there. She wasn't sure what was happening, at the other end of this internet wire that was out there, the other end of the cameras. And after a couple minutes, Amber said, "Okay, that's good. Thank you very much." And what Amber had done in that little pause had drawn a sketch of Heidi, because she so appreciated what Heidi was doing. And that kind of started off the feeling that I got about Amber, is she's one of those people that has a real artistic sense and a very giving sense to her. And if I had to define Amber in 2 words, it's artist and giving. And I think that's a pretty cool thing to have, if that's your gifts for the world. And my name's Clark, and I'm with an organization that I started a few years ago called Chase the Music. And our mission is to give hope, strength, love, and joy to kids battling critical conditions. And if you guys know any of Amber's story, you know that this is the perfect time for this kind of a gift. And so, about that same time that I met Amber and I heard Heidi's story about her, we also ran into a composer who's up in, we'll just say Canada, because I can't remember which city, if he's Ontario or Quebec. He's in Canada. It doesn't get as hot in Canada, I don't think, as it does down here. And so he's a composer. He does all kinds of symphonic work. He does flute work. And he heard the story about Amber and said, "Hey, I would love to compose a piece." Let me introduce Heidi K. Begay. And Heidi K. is a flutist living in Dallas currently. Her husband's from here in Farmington. Her in-laws, in the dark hair, are right here. Another one over here, hiding over my shoulder, trying to figure out what key he's going to be playing in. I get to laugh. So my organization, we get all this great music created, and I don't know anything about music. I played the triangle in high school. But I always hear people, across the stage from each other saying, "What key's it in?" You guys don't know what the keys are, so you have to ask. So I had to ask. So Heidi K. Begay will be performing an original piece. It'll be the final piece of the evening. It's called Fantasy by Ron Royer. And it's going to be a pretty amazing piece. I've heard little snippets from it. And to make something really special today, I wanted to add in a native performer. And I'd like to introduce Red Spirit. And Red Spirit will be performing he's doing his lessons. But he'll be performing drum, he'll be performing flute, he'll be doing vocalizations, I believe, and a guitar piece. And I'm going to let the artists introduce their own pieces as they go, because I don't know what they're going to be doing, to tell you the truth. So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it.
Hello, and Yat. My name
Red Spirit. That's my stage name, but my original name is Glenn Talley. Originally from East Southwest, Arizona. But I slow like I never just chin, she does a chedo, told a chini, does another. At ego, the nensla. That's how you introduce yourself and that also. Anyway, I want to start out with like an honor drum song, so I'd like to have all of us stand up if you can. If you can't, that's fine. But usually at the beginning of a ceremony or a powwow or things like that, they do a drum song that kind of opens up the ceremony or the dancing, and then on top of that, sometimes they do veterans, honor veterans with these songs, and then also people that have gone before us through this pandemic, and it's been pretty rough on a lot of people. So, and I know that there's some in the family who have lost a loved one. So I like to do this song to honor all of those that have gone. But their spirit still remains and their memories still remain with us today. So on that note, I'd like to do this song to kind of give a healing in a way. Yeah. You may be seated. Give a big hand to our brother here. He's doing a good job. He's a drummer too, so I was like, I want to use him today. Okay, we'll do a flute song next. So the flute, I don't know, some of us, it's always introduce the flute as a very sacred object. It's an instrument for our natives. Of course, every tribe has their own stories behind it, and one of them is Kokopelli, and it's also for spring, so that, there's reproduction involved during the springtime for the plants, and, sometimes even the sheep will have their, start, they perhaps go through that process of being, impregnated and stuff, and then next thing you know, later on there's a time of harvest and also the reproduction process. And Kokopelli was the one that was actually kind of like blesses everything, like bless the plants, the animals, us as human beings. And, new babies are coming, new harvest and everything's coming in the fall. And during the spring is always the beginning of these things. So that's where this flute comes from. It comes from that origin in our way, And sister here, she has a different origin from the Eastern civilizations, so they have their own stories for this too, for their own flutes and stuff. So, but I'll go ahead and do a short flute song for you guys. It's called, I call it Sacred Wind, but I always tell people I play by my spirit. What my spirit tells me to do is what leads me to what songs that I can share with you, because that comes from the heart, comes from my spirit, and just in a native way.
meet you. And I see Kimber's here, and it's nice to meet you, Amber, for the first time. And what Red Spirit said about the flutes and the meaning and the significance of the flutes from the East and the different tribes is really beautiful. And for you to know, I've actually been studying this flute, which is, I've been calling it the silver flute this whole weekend to distinguish between the cedar native flute. But I've been studying this flute ever since actually I was 10 or 11, and so I'm 37. So I've been studying this flute for 20-some years. And I actually have 3 degrees in flute, which is a really wonky, bonkers thing. My uncle, I swear, he loves me to death. He married Eric and I, but he goes, you know, you have a terminal degree in blowing into a pipe? I'm like, yeah, okay. It's more prettier than that, but all right. So it makes me chuckle. But yeah, the flute for me is something very significant. I started off playing piano when I was a little girl and then transitioned into flute. And I loved it so much that I wanted to be a flutist and perform and go off and study and make it my career. So I teach back in Dallas, I perform, and I love it. And so this flute and all flutes, it's interesting because as flutists we have an air about us. We are, you know, from my research, and I would be curious to see what Red Spirit has found over the years, but us flutes claim to be like the first wind instrument. And then from there, the oboe and the saxophone and the clarinet came from it. And one of the very first prehistoric flutes was found in like Iceland, Greenland, that area, like 3000 BC. And somebody in a cave had carved out some tone holes into an animal's bone. So from there, us flutists are like, oh yes, of course, you know, music, you know, and woodwind instruments come from us. And then over time, you know, for thousands of years, then we come to this flute that we have here, the modern flute. And this design has been used by modern day flutists since about 1847. So this is fairly, you know, recent, fairly modern, and nothing really has changed on this Western flute since 1847. So anyways, I didn't mean to give you a historic lesson. I just got really jazzed up by hearing how Glenn was describing his approach to the instrument. And same thing for us. Today I'm going to be playing a lot of solo flute pieces. So these pieces are written by mostly dominantly French composers. And even though it's notated, and I'm using my screen to read off the musical notation from, you know, pieces written in the early 1900s and 2000s, we are still playing as if the music is improvised. It should sound improvised. It should still sound like it's in the moment. So it's really neat to see how, like, here we have a cedar Native American flute to a silver. This is all silver flute. And yes, it's different approaches, and there's a lot of differences, but there's also a lot of similarities, and I think that's really neat. And the last thing I would like to say is thank you to Chase the Music for having me be a part of this opportunity. I love working with Ron, and I'll talk about his piece later, but it was really neat to work with a composer on a newly commissioned work. A lot of performers don't always get that opportunity, and so I was very blessed to have that opportunity. And so this first, I'm going to play 2 pieces now, and then I'll hand it back over to Glenn. The first piece is by Debussy, and it's titled Syrinx. It was written in 1913, and Syrinx falls in love with this nymph, and he can't have her, so he obsesses over her. And then the second piece is titled The Children Are Playing by Nielsen, so I hope you enjoy. Gotta make sure the pedal's working.
Next, I'd like to do a song to honor the father of Ember, the late father. And I'm sure there's plenty of you have lost a loved one during this pandemic too. And I'll dedicate it to each and every one of those folks that you have lost to this disease and to other things, you know. I think it's the right thing to do for our families, because when we don't remember or we don't have memories of them and good memories, it makes it difficult to heal. So I'd like to do a song called Go Rest High on That Mountain. The song is originally done by Vince Gill, country singer. Who knows Vince Gill? Yeah, everybody. Like George Strait. No. but this is just a song. I'd like to do this song to honor all those. I know your life on earth is trouble, and only you could know the pain. You weren't afraid to face the devil. You're no stranger to the rain. Go rest high on that mountain, son. Your work on earth is done. Go to heaven and shout, love more than far and the sun. Oh, how we cried that day you left us. We gathered round your grave to grieve, which I could see the angels' faces when they knew your sweet voices. Go rest high on that mountain, son. Your work on earth is done. Go to heaven and shout, love more than far and the sun. Go rest high on that mountain, son. Your work on earth is done. Go to heaven, let us shout, love for the Father and the Son. Go rest high on that mountain, son. Your work on earth is done. Go to heaven, shout, love for the Father and the Son. bless you.
I was telling Glenn at the coffee shop that I really love his voice, and sitting here and listening to native flute and country music and playing my silver flute is kind of a full circle moment for me, because my husband, Eric, grew up listening to Johnny Cash and Mr. Horton from Dad right there, and his nickname is Mr. Horton, and somehow my nickname now is Mrs. Horton. And to share the same stage with Brother Glenn is really, really special for me, because I have studied the native flute and I have played native flute many, many times, but to share it with another flutist on stage, playing native and then hearing country and then playing the pieces I love, it's like a full circle moment for me, so that's really cool. And speaking of singing, Glenn had asked me to be back up in harmony with him, and I said, "Oh Lord, you do not want to hear me sing." So, good thing Shirley and I came up here and, or Colin came up here and started shaking the shaker, because, oh my goodness, my one talent is this. So, the next two pieces that I would like to share with you are, again, two solo flute pieces. The first is by Chaminade, and her first name is Cécile, and it's also a French piece. And to hear a piece by a French woman composer from this time was very rare, because women were supposed to do a pen name, under a man's name in order to get it heard or seen. So this is a piece by Cécile Chaminade, titled Pièce Romantique. And the second piece is also French. You're noticing a theme here. And it's by a composer named Poulenc. And it basically, the translation is, a flute player is mourning in the ruins. So I hope you enjoy. continue and you hear it go past this little C and I start up at the top again, it's going to sound significantly different than what Poulenc wrote, but this is Gary Shocker's addition to the piece. So it's really neat to see like an early 20th century work combined with a 21st century composer and his rendition of it. So it's kind of fused together.
So everybody still awake? I know these flute songs, they're very mellow and kind of calm your spirit and everything. So, but I think it's good to have that once in a while. And so with this song, I'm going to end. This is a song about a little baby. The baby is sleeping, and the father or the mother talks to the child in the Navajo language, telling him that they love him forever and ever. So, and the baby will hear that as they sleep, and they kind of grow up knowing that there's love in the home. So, just wanted to do this song to kind of give it that emphasis. Nashod ako ayonin shri iyahineyu Hene anga, hene anga, hene yaga ayonin shri iyahineyu Hene anga, hene anga, hene anga ayonin shri iyahineyu Thank you.
That was really beautiful.
Thank you.
So this concludes the concert with one last piece, and this is the piece that Ron Breuer, our friend, wrote for Amber. And it's called Fantasy for solo flute. And a little bit about Ron, and I know he's going to watch the recording later, so sorry, Ron, if I'm misquoting something, but I think I've got his story down pretty well. He's a conductor up in Canada, and he's also a cellist. And he's tied to the flute very strongly because of his aunt, Louise. And supposedly, growing up with music, you know, in his life, he felt very drawn to the flute community. And he's written some works for flute, and he has a wide canon of amazing classical works for all sorts of instruments and ensembles, small and large. And Ron and his aunt have done a lot of recordings, and some even out in Hollywood. And so I met Ron actually around the same time I met Clark through the Ultimate Music Business Summit, and that's something that I've been working on now for 2.5 years with my friends Garrett and Arthur, and I was getting to know Ron more and more, and he and I just had this instant bond, an instant friendship, and we could talk for hours. I mean, we would get on meetings to discuss something about UMBS or something about Choose the Music, and really the meeting agenda was only 15 minutes long, and the next thing you know, it was like 2 hours later. And he was just telling me phenomenal stories about playing in these Hollywood studios and stories about well-known composers that his aunt had, or his friends had, links to in some sort of way, like Bartok and Wagner and these huge giants in the compositional world. So I would just sit there and listen for hours on Zoom while Ron just talked my ear off about these wonderful, wonderful memories. And so all that's to say is he has a very warm heart, very warm spirit, very friendly man. And his wife, Kay, is a very nice lady. And they were very sweet to just make me feel like a part of their home instantaneously. So writing, I think when Ron was writing this piece and getting to know Amber and me, it just comes off the page and it just seems so seamless and effortless. And that just is a testament to his writing and his skills as a musician. And going through the piece and learning it, it's really neat because there's different characters. And hopefully I portray the different characters and storyline very well, because with that Hollywood film life that he's recorded into for so many years, his main thing through music is storytelling. And that's something that he always tells me in conversations, is that he wants to tell a story. He wants to share a plot and characters and all of that. So hopefully you can hear those different moments in the story very well. And as I've been learning this piece, it's really cool because I know I've learned from Amber that she likes anime, and we've been getting to know each other through Instagram. I watch her Instagram stories, and she has such a playful personality and also very sweet and somber at the same time. So I think there's a lot of really cool moments in here that portray that. So